For more, let's bring in former Las Vegas Police Lieutenant Randy Sutton and retired ATF agent Scott Sweetow, who is also the former acting director of the ATF Terrorist Explosive Device Analytical Center. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So some riveting details from the FBI and other authorities during that news conference that wrapped just moments ago, including that the suspect traveled to Egypt in June 2023, made a couple of scouting trips to New Orleans, including wearing those Meta glasses to record video of Bourbon Street and other places he was cruising around. Scott, what do you make of those details?
Thought it was a fascinating presser. A lot of details about the killer's travels. I think it was obviously significant that he went overseas, particularly to Egypt. But I think it was also interesting that they confirmed that he was making a very powerful homemade explosive. In this case, the thought process is that he was making RDX. It's commonly used in explosives by the military and also in the civilian sector, much more powerful than what is normally in pipe bombs. And the fact that he was actually trying to synthesize that, I think, is raising a lot of eyebrows in both ATF and FBI. And those are all things that are going to have to be run to ground, because it certainly implies a greater level of sophistication than we thought even just 24 hours ago.
We're showing the video of him placing IEDs in coolers in New Orleans. Randy, what do you make of these latest revelations?
Well, it shows the pathway to radicalization. And this is very interesting as far as looking at his past. And this is really critical to determine if there are other people involved with this. They may be on the foreign soil. And but he didn't do this completely by himself. He was completely radicalized. And the other part of this, though, is the elephant in the room. Is the leadership failure at the highest levels of the city government, law enforcement that took place in this regard. One thing that we're very, very fortunate about is that his skill level in the detonation of those devices did not function, and that saved lives. I wonder what the reasoning is, because clearly he had the knowledge to create these devices, but apparently did not have the skill level to detonate them.
Scott, with your background in federal law enforcement, what are next steps in terms of what federal authorities are doing in this investigation?
It's apparent to me that they've known about this foreign travel for some time, either through searches of his passport history or by going through law enforcement partners like CBP, Customs and Border Protection. So they would have been digging into it. Obviously, and I think this was mentioned at the presser, the LEGAT system, the FBI legal attaches in those affected countries would have already been pinged. They're going to get together with their partners, both on the law enforcement side, but also on the intelligence community side, and see if they were aware of his travel over there and if there was anything unusual. That's going to be key, because we need to unravel whether this was someone who was able to do a lot of research, which doesn't really seem likely, synthesize these explosives, come up with a fusing and firing system, and do it all just off the internet, or if he had help, if there are people who could be charged with material support to terrorism. And I think that's really going to be the next big steps that FBI and ATF are going to want to dig into.
Randy, you served in a community that had lots of big events. When you look at New Orleans, they've got the Super Bowl in a little over a month. Here in Washington, we've got an inauguration coming up. And then beyond the Super Bowl in New Orleans, you've also got Mardi Gras. Will federal, state, and local authorities be ready for these huge events on the horizon?
You know, with what we saw with this failure in New Orleans on New Year's Eve, I think that perhaps because of the scrutiny that is now on this city, that there will be a massive upsurge in the strategy and the strategic approach to their factors involved here. So I am hoping that there will be a full court press in the creation of an environment that will lead to much greater safety. But we can't ignore the rot at the top. that we saw demonstrated as a result of this debacle in New Orleans with that first presser and then the pressers afterwards that showed the deep confusion and the response, a very, very poor response to this event.
Randy Sutton, Scott Sweetow, thank you so much for reacting, responding, giving your analysis to the breaking news of the moment. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.